serving as a panelist on the first panel session, themed Powering Decisions with AI. We have David Brown, the founder and managing partner of D. Brown Consulting. David is passionate about data analytics and visualization and has experience building business solutions for organizations across various industries. Also serving as panelists are our previous speakers, Rolan and Dr. Ekechi Nwokah. To moderate this panel session is Ladi Asuni, a partner in the digital transformation practice of KPMG in Nigeria. Ladi has experience delivering digital and technology-enabled business transformation and performance improvement solutions for top and mid-tier financial service organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panelists and moderator.
David, I'm going to be starting with you. And I think, with all the buzz around AI, obviously the members of the audience have some knowledge and have already started applying it. But when we bring this to the African context, what sort of relevant AI use cases do you see making significant impact for businesses operating in Africa?
I was doing an experiment. I'll ask you to do this on WhatsApp. You're doing an experiment on WhatsApp. You start talking about something in a group. You talk about, let's say, something silly. Let's say gala. You just start talking about gala every day. Tomorrow you're going to say a gala ad in your email. Do you know that? And you'll be like, oh, what a coincidence. It's not really a coincidence. That's data working, right? So that's data working. So data is already working in Africa. Data is working every single day. How can you harness that data? That's the key thing. How can you harness it for real life-changing things? So obviously, yesterday I was trying to get to third mainland, trying to get to the mainland very quickly. And Google kind of advised me, by the way, have you heard the Nigerian voice of Google? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. It sounds so real. The pronunciations are very good, isn't it? Yeah, I'll ask a question. Just shout it out. What language would you ask your kids to learn right now? Let's assume you want your kids to learn a language. What language would that be? Can you just shout it out? Mandarin. What language? Mandarin. Why Mandarin? Okay, China is taking over the world, right? Okay, so that's not the language they should learn. They should learn coding. They should learn how to speak to computers. That's the language for speaking to computers, isn't it? So actually, they should learn coding. Because currently, if you speak English to your phone, it can translate back to French and Spanish and every other language. So you can actually speak English and it gets translated. So coding is the language. Now, our generation, unfortunately, we didn't have that in our syllabus, right? But kids have to have that in their syllabus now. And for transforming Africa, it's really education. Education, if you read the Millennium Development Goals, one of the key sustainability goals is poverty. As in, poverty is like number one. We need to solve poverty. And the way to solve poverty is not to give out money, it's to educate. And really, we can educate en masse now in a very far cheaper than we could before. So I think education is the key use case. How many of us here know Khan Academy? Just hands up if you know Khan Academy. Now, unfortunately for your lesson teachers, I've kind of got them out of a job. So your Khan Academy is like the whole nursery to university free of charge online, right? And what's happening in some countries is the syllabus of this whole country, the educational syllabus of the country is being transformed to something called a flipped classroom. So that's a use case because how Khan Academy works, it uses a lot of AI. So let me give you one small example. Let's assume your kid is in primary 3 or something, they're doing algebra, right? So they're doing algebra in class and she's not very good in algebra, she just needs a little bit of help. You go online to this platform, you log in as a parent, you log your kid in as a student, right? And your teacher can also log in. And they're watching the videos on algebra, the use case videos on algebra. And then she's answering questions on algebra. And because maybe there's a question A, B, C, she's hovering over B, trying to pick B. She doesn't pick B. B is the wrong answer. But the system understands that by picking B, that means that she doesn't understand the concept in this way. And because kids don't understand it in this way, this is how we should change the teaching to be able to teach her so that she can understand it. That's because of B. If it was C, it's something else. That's AI working. And that's instant. And guess what? That's free. Free is a very nice thing, isn't it? But data is not free, right? We need to buy data to kind of log on. So those are small use cases. I'll give you another one in healthcare. So healthcare, if you think about doctors, as my wife's a doctor, and she talked to this surgeon. There's one very specialist kind of surgery, and he's the best in the world. And he was, in the conversation, she asked him, by the way, how many of these surgeries did you do last year? He said, before I answer that question, I used to do almost like 300 of these surgeries in a couple of years back. But last year I did 20. And she's like, well, you're the best in the world. He said, yes, my 30 robots do surgeries, about 10 surgeries a day, my 30 robots. And all of them talk to each other. So you have the robots doing the surgery, and he said there's no human surgeon that can do it as well as this robot. It's not possible.
Okay. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Okay. Roland, when you gave your presentation, you talked about the need for the organization to change and embrace the change around adopting AI. So in very practical terms, what sort of capabilities should organizations and business leaders need to build? What sort of capabilities do they need to begin to build in order to compete effectively in this AI age?
In a practical manner, it's basically it's deciding on a use case which you think has business value and that you believe that you can solve, and let's say the manner of which we need to work is a bit different from regular projects or regular IT solutions. So as we mentioned before, AI and data are not just around technology, but also around culture. So you need to harness the stakeholders, you need to bring on different capabilities and different intakes into the equation. I give you an example. So I am a very good CDO, and I have developed a set of excellent dashboards that showed the working capital for my company. And then I could come up to my CEO and I give him this dashboard. Then usually what we see is that he's not happy with that. Why he's not happy with that? Because he was not involved in the process. He was not taken as part of the process and was not considered. So he's saying, I can decide by myself. I don't need data. I don't trust this data. Where is this data is coming from? So to create a successful transformation process, to create a reliable process, we need different stakeholders, we need different people aligning and working together, creating insights. So if I'm a tech guy, I can't really understand the process of marketing, or what is the marketing pain points, or where is, what do you want to achieve. For example, you are running an ad or an online campaign, and your conversion is low. You're not able to get any clicks. You're not able to get any traffic. So as the tech person, I can give you a technology that will enable you to run 500 parallel campaigns. But for this to be successful, you need to give me the information of what do you want to show, who are your clients, what is the message, what is the success, and what is the KPIs that you are measured as a CMO. So working together, working jointly is the key for success.
Okay, thank you, Roland. Just a reminder to the audience, keep your questions coming in. We're looking at them and we'll be sure to take some of them. Ekechi, I'm coming over to you. When you gave your presentation, you really presented some interesting insights, looking at the comparison between the traditional lending model and what you've been able to achieve with Minds.io. Do you mind sharing with the audience what sort of improvements can we expect to see across the entire business operating model? So you talked about the speed to deliver service, but then what about the people? What about your processes? What sort of changes can incumbent businesses begin to realize when they adopt an AI-driven model?
I guess, for me, and I imagine many business leaders think the same way, and maybe I'll be a bit local in my response. I'm an Igbo man. So for me, AI, the importance of AI is how can I come out money from the thing? That's my interest in AI. I'm just, and I think most business leaders are going to look at how can I leverage AI to make revenue and profit. That's the point. That's why we're all here. So I don't, so I think, if I'm thinking about running my business, I think about cost, speed, profit, competitive advantage, revenue, scale. And at the end of the day, again, I bring it back to a very local, it's about profit, about trying to generate revenue and generate a business position in the market. And so the ways, people can really leverage, in my opinion, AI, and I noticed that when we were doing the questions, not everybody knows what AI is, so I'll just do a quick 10 seconds. So artificial intelligence is really trying to use, so as human beings, we make decisions based on our past experiences. That's called learning. And so based on our past experiences, we then make new decisions. So artificial intelligence is really artificially trying to make intelligent decisions based on previous experience, which is your data. And so, for example, how much should I offer somebody in a loan? That's a very difficult decision for a human to make. I know your father, I know where you work, I know your name, I like your face, whatever, whatever, whatever. But when you make this impartially, you make this with a data set that an algorithm will then decide based on numbers of data points how much to actually offer, as a concrete example. And the reason I'm tying this to the use case is really there's no such thing as general AI. Everything is around what problem are you solving and what's the quickest and fastest, cheapest way to solve that problem. So my feedback would be that AI is not a magic tool. It's not some big buzzword. I know everyone likes to say AI. It's really around using the latest techniques to really solve a particular use case. If you're in transport, use AI to solve one particular problem in transport. If you're in lending, use it to solve one particular problem in lending, and then expand from there. That'll be my opinion.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take one of the questions from the audience, David. The question is Africa really ready for AI? From the user's angle, have we really come of age in adopting AI to drive business processes in the informal market?
So I'll answer that. You know how I'm Nigerian too, so we answer a question with the question, right? So what do you mean by Africa ready for AI? Because we're already using AI whether we like it or not. AI is here, all right? AI is here. So maybe I think the question is related to how are Africans going to use AI to kind of solve their problems? So AI is already here whether we like it or not. And I think there are really main two ways. There's the school of thought that says AI is going to replace us, right? So AI is going to replace human intelligence. And then the second school of thought says AI is going to augment human intelligence. So which one is it? Is it going to replace or augment? I think it's kind of both. There's certain things that it will replace. There's some mundane tasks that you really don't like that AI and bots and all the different things around AI can replace. But then for Africa, how do we take advantage of it? Maybe the same way we took advantage of mobile phones, right? We kind of leapfrog technology. We didn't have copper cables and all those things that people had for hundreds of years, and then we just jumped into GSM, right? We just jumped into technology. And frankly speaking, I think kind of hovering or jumping over those technologies has really helped us, and it's something we really need to do for AI. And we don't need to be data scientists. That's what people think, oh, I need to go learn Python, I need to learn R. Right there in your businesses, you could actually do what they call low-code solutions or even no-code solutions. And we talk about platforms. There are certain platforms there that you go, there's already all the data science stuff has been done. Jump in there and see how you can solve simple problems, very simple problems. And certain applications you already have. I'll give you one everyone uses, maybe Word or PowerPoint or stuff. There's something called ideas there. You just has data, Excel looks at data and then pulls out interesting ideas and insights from that data. You already have it. That's AI using applications. So there are three things: platforms, we need to harness that, applications, and then AI for business itself. So it's already here. We just need to use it.
Okay, thank you, David. The next question is for Ekechi. I think a number of the members of the audience would like to know what sort of default rates you are getting, leveraging AI. And that's very closely tied to the question I had for you initially, which is saying, how do you overcome the data quality challenges? And I think that's, a sort of linkage between what, garbage in, garbage out. So share your experience with us.
Yeah, and thanks for the question. Whoever gave the audience question, thanks for that. So our default rate, on average, what we're seeing in our platform is under 10%, which is under the microfinance bank average default rate and under the bank average default rate. If you look at the NPLs at the commercial banks, so AI is transformative, even in this high risk general retail population space. We're getting lower default rates than the banking ecosystem. There are a number of questions up on so I'll let you handle those, as you wish. There's two things I wanna sort of touch on. So one is data privacy and data quality. So you asked about data quality, but I'll add a privacy thing, so I think it's really important. So data quality, so Nigeria is an interesting place in terms of data. So we see a lot of data. So for example, let's say, and Yoruba people always have they have many sort of prefixes and postfixes. So let's say your name is Babajide, okay? If you look at somebody's, say, SIM registration, they might have Jide as their name. If you go to their BVN, they might have Babajide. In their bank account registration, they might have Baba, right? And so you have to then decide in Nigeria whether this is really the same person. And if you cannot determine that it's the same person, you can't really give them a loan, right? By regulation and also by risk. And so the data quality, we actually use AI, funny enough, to improve the data quality that we get. And the quality, it depends on where you're getting it from. If you're getting from large institutions, banks, telcos, the data is usually fine. The issue is when there's a human being involved in the registration process. So the person that's registering you in the account, did they put your first name and your middle name and your surname in the right slots? Sometimes that's all mixed up. So you see funny things like that just by the nature of sort of how we sometimes loosely manage ourselves in the country. Another important thing, I think, which I saw in one of the questions, which I'll just sort of briefly touch on, is privacy. It's very, very important. First of all, there's regulation, strict regulation around privacy from NIDA and other places that you have to adhere to. But it's very important from a customer-centric point of view with AI and how you process, secure, and manage the data. In fact, it is the critical thing. Because ultimately, when you deal with these data sets, you're in the business of trust. Customers are trusting you with their information. And if you leak it, if it gets lost, if one of your employees sells it, you can lose your business overnight and really damage the people. So it's important to get customer consent for access to the data to make sure that you keep a record of it. It's important to make sure that you're using the very latest security protocols and make sure that you're anonymizing as much as possible so that if there is a breach that people can't really figure out who this data belongs to. So both improving and focusing on the quality of the data so you can make informed decisions, and also the privacy of the data so you don't violate customer rights is very important.
Thank you. My next question is to Rolan, and I think this obviously a big challenge, and it will be good to hear your experience. So what comes first, the culture transformation or the digital transformation? And I think this is something that we encounter, even as we work with clients, where you see that there's beautiful ideas, good initiatives, but for some reason, the culture of an organization can either determine the success or failure of initiatives. Before you answer that, we're going to be putting up a poll up on Slido just to get the user feedback around this, a single word that describes the single biggest barrier to adopting AI in your organization. So as Roland is answering the question on culture versus transformation, you can begin to submit your answer. So Roland, please.
Thank you for the question. What came first, the chicken or egg? It's something that is something that we need to adapt as a change, that it's not the old world that we used to be in, okay? So usually it goes hand in hand. It needs to be done together. Digital cannot live without the organization changing, and organizations must change to adapt to the digital era. So basically, we need to do it together. In my opinion and my perspective, you cannot, let's say, skip the digital transformation because it's happening, because your competitors are doing it, because they want to have a competitive advantage. And as Charles Darwin said a long time ago, the species that will survive are not the strongest or not the most intelligent, but the most adaptable. So you have to understand, or you have to realize that a tidal wave is coming, and you need to be on top of the wave and not beneath, because then you'll wash out. Meital mentioned in her conversation, if you look at the Fortune 500 companies in the 70s, and you look at it now, completely different. 70s, a lot of oil, gas, gold companies. Today, it's IT, technology, media companies. So the landscape is changing completely, and competition is on the corner. And you need to own the digital transformation, but to make it a successful one, you need to do it together with the organization, with the people. You need to make sure that the relevant stakeholders, you have the buy-in, and that they are willing to make this change with you. If the stakeholders won't be willing to make the change, then they will probably be unemployed soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. The sort of responses we're getting are quite interesting. I don't know whether Roland discussing culture had any influence on what people were responding to. We're going to look at each of the main problem areas, and then I'll have each speaker just sort of help the audience address what sort of initiatives or what should we be doing to tackle these big barriers to adopting AI. Culture, I think that's what Roland has just spoken to. So I don't know if you want to then talk about...
I just want to address one which is bold and in red, yes. And it's the infrastructure.
Okay.
So today we are in the age of the cloud, and I think 2 or 3 months ago, Microsoft opened a new data center in Johannesburg in South Africa. So the cloud, I'm not saying that it's easy to take your business model and your operations and just transform everything to the cloud, and there's no magic. But what I'm saying is that the new initiatives, the new ideas, or the new things that you want to achieve and to accomplish for your business, do it on the cloud. It's more secure, it's more reliable, you can scale it, it's there. Microsoft and AWS and Google are taking a very big part of the, let's say, risks. They are managing those sites, they are taking the infrastructure, and you just really need to take your business and deploy it on the cloud. You don't have to worry about servers, you don't worry about farms, you don't worry about having enough disk space. So I urge to take the new business and put them on the cloud.
Okay. David, do you mind speaking?
Yeah, I'll speak to, I think, people, I guess, people. So people and culture, I think, is the same. But really, what you hear now is the buzzword, the future of work, right? So the future of work, how we work or how we've worked is basically going to change, or is changing already. So your offices, where you go to an office, you have an office space, you have your desk, your chair. That's in the past. Now, 50% of the US workforce is now freelance, right? What do I mean? The freelance, they're sitting at home, probably they haven't even brushed their teeth, and they're there sitting and working on the computer and solving lots of problems, right? So if you want to hire maybe the top, maybe you're working on a project and you need an engineer with like 20, 30 years experience, you could sit in your room right now and get that engineer to work on a project for you. So you could actually start up a whole new organization with 100 or 200 staff sitting in your house. That's possible now. That's the future of work. And it's people that make that happen, right? So people will still be people, they'll still work. It's just the means by which they're working that has changed. And that kind of reduces a lot of the infrastructure bottlenecks. So they don't need to go in traffic for 22 hours to get to their office. They're actually sitting where they are and doing their work. You could have, let's say, a mother that's just had kids and she's 6 months in the house taking care of the kid. She could work for 2 or 3 hours as a call center rep. All she needs is probably good mic and stuff and a laptop, and she'll learn about whatever the company is in Switzerland, and she'll be here in Nigeria being a call center rep for a company in Switzerland, right? It's all possible now with technology. And when the data goes through, all that data that gathers, you need data for AI, right? So obviously the AI mechanisms, the machine learning algorithms will work because all that data is digital. And when it's digital, it's easy to analyze. So the future is bright when I think about AI, when I think about data in general. So people, I think it's a big thing that will really drive the future. Yeah.
Okay. So Ekechi, any closing remarks as we wrap up the discussion as it relates to overcoming the barriers to AI adoption?
Yeah, I mean, I would just encourage, the business folks and in the audience. What I've seen, in my particular industry, because I deal with large entrenched institutions, so telcos, banks, particularly in the banking sector, and in particular areas that are very heavily regulated, there is a fear I see in the executives that have built their businesses over 20, 30 years, that have developed 6 senses for what will work, what will not work, how they're going to make their businesses successful. All of those things, I think, as David mentioned, are changing. And, I would just encourage the business leaders to take a bit more risk, both in terms of the people that they're looking to hire and the processes and the projects that they invest in. It is really important for businesses to utilize the data that they have. Most businesses, a lot of them have data sitting around that they don't use. And it's important to monetize that data in the new age. And I would just encourage, all of these things on the board, infrastructure and culture and people, can only be done if there's a willingness and buy-in, particularly from the executive level team, to take a little bit more risk in your business. If you do not take that risk, as Rolan said, you may not be around in 10 years because the entire landscape is changing. So I'll just encourage everybody to just take a little bit more risk in your business. Take a step outside your normal box in order to survive, the next 10-year wave of data and AI.
Okay, thank you, Ekechi. Just looking at the sort of responses we got to that last poll, I think what I found quite instructive, before we had this session, I would have instinctively assumed that data quality would have been the top barrier. But as we can see from the audience, obviously data quality is the least of the challenges. The bigger issues to resolve are the issues around the culture, issues around the people, our infrastructure, and just as the panelists have been kind enough to share, there are ways around overcoming this barrier. With this, I'd like to thank the panelists. Thank you very much. You've been a very wonderful audience, and thanks to our speakers.